I still remember the exact shade of amber the sun turned that afternoon. Like honey diluted in warm water, spilling through Dave's apartment window and pooling on the hardwood floor where we sat. 7 years of friendship. And somehow, we always ended up here. Cross-legged on the ground instead of the perfectly good couch behind us, a half-eaten pizza growing cold between us, debating something completely ridiculous. I'm telling you, Julius, penguins are objectively funnier than dolphins, Dave insisted, gesturing with a slice he'd forgotten to eat. Tomato sauce threatened to drip onto his Harvard Medical School acceptance letter, which he tossed carelessly aside an hour ago, like it was junk mail, instead of the culmination of everything he'd worked toward. That was Dave for you. Brilliant, composed, the kind of person who color-coded his notes and never missed a deadline, but also the guy who'd rather talk about flightless birds than acknowledge he'd just secured his entire future. While everyone else our age was clawing their way through uncertainty, Dave moved through life with this quiet certainty that made you feel steadier just standing next to him. Me? I was the disaster he'd been cleaning up after since sophomore year of college. Dolphins have personalities, I argued, stealing the slice from his hand before it could cause a catastrophe. They have names for each other. They save people from sharks. Penguins waddle. That's your entire argument? Have you seen them waddle, Jules? He grinned, that lopsided smile that always made something in my chest shift sideways. Case closed. I threw a wadded napkin at his face. He caught it without looking because, of course he did. Dave had reflexes honed from years of me throwing things at him. Paper balls, car keys, half-formed dreams about opening an independent bookstore that everyone said would fail. He caught those too, turned them over in his capable hands, and somehow made them seem possible. Hey, beautiful souls. Before we continue, comment below. Where are you watching from tonight? I love knowing how far these stories travel, and it warms my heart to see our BL family from all over the world. We met during freshman orientation, when I'd accidentally walked into the wrong dorm room, his room, at 2 a.m, drunk on cheap vodka and homesickness. Instead of calling security, he'd made me instant ramen and let me ramble about how terrified I was that I'd made a mistake leaving Albuquerque, that I wasn't smart enough to be here, that everyone could tell I was faking it. Everyone's faking it, he'd said simply, stirring MSG-laden noodles in a chipped bowl. You just do it with better stories. 7 years later, I was still telling stories, freelancing for arts magazines, barely scraping rent, living on optimism and Dave's occasional grocery runs when he noticed my fridge held nothing but condiments and spite. He never made it a thing, just showed up with bags he'd claim were extras from shopping, even though he hated grocery stores and meal prepped like a contestant on a survival show. My strengths were talking my way into parties we weren't invited to and finding beauty in things other people overlooked. My flaws were longer. Impulsive decisions, terrible sleep schedule, that habit of running from anything that felt too heavy, too real. Dave's strength was being my gravity. His flaw was never admitting when something was too heavy for him either. I haven't said it yet, I ventured, watching him finally bite into his pizza. Said what? That you're excited? About med school? Boston? Something flickered across his face, there and gone like a match struck in wind. I'm excited. Liar. I'm excited, he repeated, but his eyes stayed on the window, on that amber light that was already fading into dusk. It's just... The sentence dissolved. Dave, who always finished his thoughts, who never left loose ends dangling, he just let it hang there in the air between us. Boston was 3,000 miles from here. From me. Neither of us said it. We've got all summer, I offered, trying to sound light, carefree, like I hadn't been counting down the days since his acceptance arrived. 73 days until he left. Plenty of time for you to admit penguins are a ridiculous hill to die on. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. Outside, the sun finished setting and the room fell into blue shadow. In the half-light, I couldn't quite read his expression. Couldn't tell if the weight pressing down on both of us was dread or something else entirely. Something we'd spent 7 years carefully not naming. Dave's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened in that way that meant complications. That's... Who? I asked, looking really curious. Sophia. She wants to meet up this weekend. He finished. I reached for another slice I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. You should go. What I meant was, please don't. What he heard, I'll never know. 3 weeks later, I got to finally meet Sophia at Dave's birthday dinner. A place he'd picked because they served my favorite pasta, not his. That should have been my first clue that everything was already wrong. Her name was Sophia. She worked in biotech, spoke 3 languages, and had the kind of laugh that made strangers turn around hoping to be included in the joke. When she walked in, her hand found Dave's lower back with the casual ownership of someone who'd already mapped his body, already learned which touches made him lean closer. My fork scraped against porcelain, louder than I intended. Julius, Dave's told me so much about you. She slid into the booth beside him, and he shifted automatically. Not away from her, but not quite toward her either. That microscopic hesitation felt like a lifeline I had no right to grab. He says you're the reason he survived organic chemistry. I mostly just provided distractions, I said, aiming for light. My voice came out strange, flattened. You rewrote my entire final paper, Dave corrected, and his eyes caught mine across the table, soft, familiar, full of some shared history she couldn't access. At 4 in the morning, because I was too burnt out to see straight. Sophia's smile tightened at the edges, barely perceptible. That's really sweet. Sweet. Like I was a golden retriever who'd done a clever trick. Throughout dinner, I watched them. The way she touched his arm when she talked, her thumb brushing the inside of his wrist. How he nodded at the right moments but kept glancing at me, checking my reactions like I was the audience that mattered. When she mentioned plans to visit him in Boston, casually, testing how the words sounded in her mouth, Dave's hand flexed around his water glass. That'd be great, he said, voice carefully neutral. It wouldn't be great. I could tell by the tension gathering in his shoulders the way he immediately changed the subject to ask me about the magazine piece I'd been working on. He remembered the deadline. Sophia didn't know I wrote. Wait, didn't you say Julius worked at a bookstore? I freelance. The bookstore's just supplemental. Oh, she processed this, recalibrating. That must be tough financially. Dave's jaw clenched. Jules has been published in... It's fine, I interrupted, something sharp lodged beneath my ribs. She's not wrong. Across from me, Dave looked like I'd struck him. The waiter brought dessert, tiramisu, which I'd mentioned craving 2 months ago in passing. Dave had remembered. She fed him a bite from her fork, playful and intimate, and something in my throat closed up. I should have felt happy for him. Should have been celebrating that he'd found someone who fit into his future. Instead, I felt like I was watching him through glass, already gone. You okay? Dave asked quietly, while Sophia excused herself to take a call. The concern in his voice nearly broke me. He could always tell, could read every micro-expression I thought I'd buried. 7 years of being known that completely, and now someone else got to keep him. Yeah, I lied, forcing my mouth into something approximating joy. I'm happy for you, Dave, really. His hand started to reach across the table, then stopped halfway. Retreated. Thanks, he said, and the word landed between us like a stone dropped in deep water. I smiled wider, brighter, until my face ached with the performance. I wasn't happy. I was drowning. The calls started dying and reducing, mid-sentence, mid-laugh, like we'd both forgotten how our conversations used to be full of life. Where we once talked until 3 in the morning about nothing, now silence arrived uninvited after 20 minutes, sprawling between us like an unwelcome guest we were too polite to acknowledge. I should probably go, became Dave's new favorite thing to say. My text sat on read for hours now, sometimes days. When he finally responded, the messages came back polished, careful, stripped of the chaotic energy we used to trade like currency. No more receiving random photos of him. No more voice memos of him badly singing songs I knew he hated, just to annoy me. I told myself it was natural. People grew up. Priorities shifted. This was what happened when someone found a partner who they actually loved. This was normal. We met for coffee on a Wednesday because Wednesdays used to be ours, a tradition born from overlapping free periods that no longer existed. Dave arrived 7 minutes late. Apologizing about traffic I knew he'd left early enough to avoid. I'd been there for 30 minutes, watching the door. "How's Sophia?" I asked because not asking felt more obvious than asking. "Good. Great, actually. She's... yeah, great." The repetition hung there, underlined in neon. "And you? Good? Yeah? You? Same." We were lying to each other for the first time in 7 years, and both of us knew it, and neither of us knew how to stop. Across the small table, his knee bounced, that anxious tell he thought he'd hidden from everyone except me. I wanted to reach over, press my palm to his leg the way I'd done 1,000 times before, still the tremor with touch that meant I see you, I've got you, but my hand stayed locked around my own mug, like it was the only solid thing left. Jules. My name in his mouth sounded like an exhale, like preparation. His gaze finally lifted, meeting mine, and something cracked open in his expression, raw and terrified, and so achingly familiar that my heart lurched sideways. "Do you ever..." My phone buzzed. A reflex born of cowardice made me glance down. The moment collapsed. "Never mind." He leaned back, and whatever he had almost said retreated behind the careful mask he'd been wearing lately. "It's stupid." "Dave, forget it." But I couldn't forget it. Couldn't forget the way his voice had fractured around my name, couldn't unsee the desperate hope that had flickered across his face before fear smothered it. I wanted to grab his hand, pull him back to that almost confession, demand he finish the sentence that might incinerate everything we'd built, or finally make it make sense. Instead, I smiled. "Okay," I responded. We finished our coffee in fragments of conversation that felt like reading a book with pages missing. When we left, we moved toward a hug, then shifted into an awkward shoulder pat that satisfied no one. His cologne, cedar and something clean, lingered after he walked away. I stood on the sidewalk, watching him disappear into the afternoon crowd, my chest hollow. I pulled out my phone, typed "I miss you" into our message thread, and stared at it for 5 full minutes before deleting every letter and walking home through streets that suddenly felt colder than they should in June. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Saturday. Sophia's number lighting up my screen, her voice scraped raw with panic. "Julius, it's Dave. He got into an accident. He's at Memorial." I don't remember grabbing my keys. Don't remember the drive, though I must have broken every traffic law between my apartment and the hospital. I only remember bursting through those sterile white doors, my heart a clenched fist behind my ribs. Sophia's mascara-streaked face in the waiting room meant nothing compared to the closed door between me and him. "They are keeping him overnight for observation." "Where?" My voice came out shredded. She pointed. I didn't wait for permission. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, vulnerable in a way that made my lungs forget their purpose. Purple bloomed across his cheekbone. His left arm rested in a temporary cast, and when his eyes found mine, something in his face just crumbled. "Hey," he whispered. I was across the room before thought could catch up, my hand finding his uninjured one, threading our fingers together like I used to before everything got complicated. "You're an idiot!" "Yeah, I know." His thumb brushed my knuckles, a tiny movement that felt enormous. Sophia cleared her throat from the doorway. "I'll give you guys a minute." The door clicked shut. Dave's grip tightened. "Dave." I sank onto the edge of his bed, my free hand moving to his hair, careful around the bandage at his temple. "I'm right here. I've been so stupid, Jules. Pushing you away as if distance would make it easier, like if I just..." Tears caught in his eyelashes, and watching him cry felt like my own chest splitting open. I thought I could want less, need less. I thought maybe if I tried hard enough with Sophia, I could stop. Stop what? The question emerged barely audible. His eyes, red-rimmed and desperate, locked onto mine. "Stop wanting you there when I wake up. Stop wondering what your day was like before you tell me. Stop feeling like I'm only half alive when you're not around."
The machines beeped steadily. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My hand trembled in his hair. "She's a good woman, I know," he continued, words tumbling faster now like a dam breaking. "Smart, stable, knows what she wants. Everything I should want, but..." His voice cracked. "She's not you." I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only stare at this person who'd been my gravity for 7 years, now falling toward me with the same terrified velocity I'd been falling alone. "Say something," he pleaded. I leaned forward, pressed my forehead to his, gentle, careful, like he was something precious I'd almost lost. "I can't lose you, Jules. I can't. I won't survive it." His uninjured hand came up, cupped my jaw, thumb catching the tear that had escaped without permission. "Then don't let go." So I didn't. Recovery became our new routine. I picked Dave up from the hospital the next morning. Sophia had an early presentation she couldn't miss. She had explained and apologized for not coming. He said nothing as I drove him home, but his working hand stayed palm up on the center console, an invitation I accepted without discussion.
The first 3 days, I barely left his apartment. I made breakfast, helped him shower without making it awkward, even as my pulse betrayed me. "You don't have to do this," he said, while I wrestled with his stubborn coffee maker. "I know." The machine gurgled to life. "Do you want me to leave?" The silence stretched long enough that I turned around. He sat at the kitchen table in morning light, hair sleep mussed, bruises fading gradually, looking at me with something that made my stomach flip sideways. "No," he said quietly. "If anything, I actually want you to stay. Thank you so much for being here with me." That night, Sophia broke up with him over the phone. I heard her through the bathroom door, kind but firm. Dave's responses came in single syllables. When he emerged, his expression held relief instead of devastation. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." He dropped onto the couch beside me, close enough that our thighs touched. I mean, I've always known she and I wouldn't last. Something in my chest unlocked. We fell into patterns that felt less like friendship and more like rehearsal for something neither of us had the courage to name. His hand found my knee during movies, absent-minded and natural. I drove him to follow-up appointments and knew his coffee order had shifted back to 2 sugars. We texted at unreasonable hours about nothing important and everything important. "Why does it feel different now?" he asked one evening, both of us sprawled on his living room floor with takeout containers scattered like casualties. "I know we've always been like this, but it's just... strange?" "Nothing is strange," I countered, turning my head to find him already watching me. My breath caught. "Dave." I should have said something profound. Should have kissed him or pulled away or made a choice that gave shape to this unnamed thing consuming all the oxygen in the room. Instead, exhaustion from days of caretaking and emotional excavation pulled me sideways until my head rested against his shoulder, his cologne mixing with laundry detergent and something uniquely him. His cheek settled against my hair. His thumb traced lazy circles on my wrist. "We'll figure it out," he murmured, though neither of us knew what "it" was yet. 3 days before he was supposed to leave for Boston, we'd spent the afternoon helping him pack. "Take a break," I'd suggested when his shoulders started creeping toward his ears. That telltale stress pattern I'd learned to read years ago. "I'll make us something." His kitchen was nearly bare. We'd already donated most of his perishables. I found olive oil, garlic, simple. I could manage simple. Except I couldn't find his pasta. "Dave, where's the..." I turned from the drawer I'd been rifling through. He was right behind me. Much closer than I'd realized. Must have walked over to help and I'd pivoted directly into his space. No buffer, no warning, just suddenly inches apart in his emptied kitchen. We both froze. I could count his eyelashes from this distance. Could see the exact spot where he'd missed a patch shaving that morning, the faint shadow along his jaw that my fingers suddenly ached to trace. His breath ghosted across my lips. Mint toothpaste and coffee and something underneath that was just Dave. Just familiar, just devastating. "Sorry," I managed, voice coming out sandpaper rough. "Didn't hear you coming." "It's..." He swallowed. I watched his throat work. "The pasta's in the box, on the counter. I already packed it." Neither of us moved. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car alarm started wailing, distant and insistent. The afternoon light slanted through his window at that specific angle that turned everything amber and golden, the way it had been that day months ago when he told me about Boston, when this whole unraveling had begun. Jules. My name emerged strangled, quiet. Not a question, not a statement, just acknowledgement that we were here in this moment, with 3 days left and 7 years of carefully constructed walls crumbling between us. His hand came up, slow, hesitant, like he was giving me every chance to stop him. His palm cupped my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone with impossible gentleness, and I stopped breathing entirely. "We can't," I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. "You're leaving. This will just..." "I know." His forehead dropped to mine, and we stood there in his gutted kitchen, breathing the same air, balanced on the knife's edge between before and after. I can't get on that plane without..." He didn't finish the sentence. I kissed him. Or maybe he kissed me. I know you're awning right now, dear listener. You still think I don't deserve you subscribing to my channel? Come on, you know I do now. Make me grin too. The origin point dissolved because suddenly his mouth was on mine, and it wasn't accidental or hesitant or questioning. It was 7 years of wanting compressed into a single point of contact, desperate and aching and exactly right. His other hand slid into my hair, angling my face closer, and I grabbed his shirt in both fists like he might disappear if I didn't hold on. He tasted like inevitability, like the answer to a question I'd been asking wrong for years, like coming home and setting the house on fire simultaneously. When we broke apart, both gasping, his eyes stayed closed like he was afraid that looking at me would make it real in a way we couldn't take back. "God," he breathed, voice wrecked. "Jules, that was..." My phone erupted from where I'd left it on the counter, my editor's ringtone, the article deadline I'd been dodging for weeks, reality announcing itself with cruel precision. We both flinched like we'd been caught. The spell shattered. Dave stepped back, dragging a hand through his hair, looking everywhere except at me. "You should get that." "Dave, please." The word broke in half. "Just answer it, please." I did, because I was a coward. Took the call in his empty bedroom while my lips still burned from his, while my hand shook so badly that I had to sit on the floor among half-packed boxes before my knees gave out completely. When I emerged 15 minutes later, he stood at the window, silhouette sharp against the dying afternoon light, shoulders rigid with tension. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. "That was..." "Don't." The word came out fierce, serrated. "Don't you dare apologize for that." He turned then, and the look on his face nearly destroyed me. Hope and terror and longing so naked that it felt like obscene, like I was seeing him without skin. "Then what do we do?" The question hung suspended, enormous and unanswerable. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart a war drum against my ribs. "Dave, I don't..." "Boston's in 3 days," his voice cracked on the number. 3 days, and then I'm 3,000 miles away, and this, whatever this is, it doesn't fix that. It doesn't change that I have to go, that you have your life here, that we... Stop. I closed the distance between us, grabbed his face in both hands, forced him to look at me. His eyes were wet. Mine probably were too. "I've been in love with you," and the words felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea if there was water below or just rocks. For years, probably, definitely. And I've been lying to myself, calling it friendship, because that was safer. Because wanting you felt like standing too close to the sun. But Dave, I... Don't. He gripped my wrists, holding me there even as he said the word. "Don't say it if you don't mean it. Don't give me this right before I have to leave. Unless..." "Unless what?" I asked. "Unless you want me to stay." The world tilted sideways. "You can't," I whispered. "Med school, Harvard, everything you've worked for. It means nothing if I lose you in the process. Jules, I'll defer, I'll reapply. I'll figure it out if it means..." "No." I pulled back, panic rising like floodwater. "No, you can't sacrifice. It's not sacrifice if I'm choosing you." The words echoed in the empty apartment. Too big, too loud, too much. We stood there, 3 feet apart now, both breathing hard,
the full weight of what we just confessed sitting between us like something alive and fragile and absolutely terrifying. "This is insane," I said, "but it came out weak." "I know." "You're supposed to leave in 3 days." "I know." "Dave, you have to go to med school. You've worked so hard for it to throw it away now." "Why not?" He stepped forward, closing the gap again, and this time when he touched me, it was certain, decided. His hand curved around my neck, thumb against my pulse point that gave away every secret I tried to hide. I opened my mouth, closed it, searched for all the logical, practical, sensible reasons we should stop this before it consumed us both. Found none that mattered more than the way he was looking at me. "I can't," I finally admitted. "I can't think of a single reason that isn't just fear." Then stopped thinking. His lips brushed my forehead, gentle and devastating. "For once in your life, Jules, stop running from things that feel too real." My hands fisted in his shirt again, dragging him closer. "This is really stupid." "Probably. We're gonna ruin everything." "I agree. I don't mind ruining everything as long as I'd have you." His mouth found mine again, softer this time, slower, like we had all the time in the world instead of 3 days. I kissed him harder, poured 7 years of want and fear and desperate hope into it until we were both gasping, until his back hit the wall and my body pressed against him like I could fuse us together. When we finally broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, the sun had set completely. His apartment sat in darkness except for the streetlight spilling through the window. "What now?" I asked against his collarbone, my lips brushing his skin. His hand slid into my hair, gentle and possessive.
Now we figure out what 3 days can hold. And after? His exhale was shaky. "I don't know. Long distance? Video calls? Me coming back every break? You visiting Boston when you can?" He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "I just know I can't do the alternative anymore. Can't pretend you're just my best friend when you've always been everything," I finished, because the word had been sitting in my chest for years, waiting for permission to be spoken. "Yeah." His smile was trembling, uncertain, heartbreakingly hopeful. "Everything." We stayed there against the wall, wrapped around each other in his empty apartment, and let the impossible weight of what we'd just done settle over us. Tomorrow we'd have to figure out logistics and plane tickets and how to love someone across 3,000 miles. Tomorrow fear might win and we might regret every word we'd said tonight. But tonight, with his heartbeat steady under my palm and his lips pressing kisses to my temple like promises, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, 7 years of almost could finally become enough. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to the way everything had just changed. Inside, Dave whispered my name like a prayer, and I answered by holding him tighter. 3 days. We had 3 days to prove that some things were worth the risk of combustion. I pulled back just enough to see his face in the dim light. Bruises faded now, expression open in a way I'd never seen it before. All his walls finally down. "I love you," I said again, because once wasn't enough. "I love you, and I'm terrified, and I have no idea how we make this work, but..." He kissed me quiet, smiled against my lips. "But we're gonna try anyway." "Yeah," I kissed him back, softer, sweeter, like sealing a promise. "We're going to try anyway." And in the wreckage of his half-packed apartment, surrounded by boxes that represented goodbye, we held each other. 3 days until Boston. 3 days until we learned if love could survive the distance we'd been building for 7 years, now that we'd finally stopped running from it. 3 days to memorize the way he said my name, the exact pressure of his hands on my skin, the sound of his laugh when I made him smile in that way that was just for me. It wasn't enough time. It would have to be. I didn't go to the airport. Dave texted me the morning he left, just boarding soon, and I stared at those 2 words for 20 minutes before typing back, safe flight, like a stranger, like someone who hadn't tasted his desperation 3 nights ago, like my chest wasn't caving in with every breath. "I'm protecting us," I told myself, protecting what we had. By week 2, his calls stopped. His texts grew sparse, functional. Updates about his program, questions about my latest article that I answered in clipped sentences stripped of everything that used to make our conversations breathe. We were hemorrhaging what we'd built, both too terrified to apply pressure to the wound. I threw myself into work, picked up extra shifts at the bookstore, told myself I was healing, adjusting, learning to function in a world where Dave existed in a different time zone, and I had successfully preserved our friendship by murdering whatever else we'd almost become. It was working, even though it was killing me. 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, our old night for rambling conversations. I woke gasping from a dream where he'd forgotten my voice, grabbed my phone with shaking hands and scrolled through months of messages, rereading jokes and observations and the casual intimacy of being known so completely. The last text sat at the top, sent 5 days ago. "Hope you're doing okay," it read. I'd never responded. My fingers moved before thought could stop them. I'm not. I miss you. I miss us. I'd rather burn everything down trying than spend another day pretending this distance is survivable. I hit send before cowardice could intervene. Then waited, heart hammering against ribs, for the response that would either save me or confirm I'd already lost him. My phone rang 17 minutes later. FaceTime. His name glowing on the screen. I answered and there he was. Hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days either. Boston's pre-dawn darkness framing him in his tiny apartment that I'd never seen but suddenly needed to memorize. "Say it again," he demanded, voice rough with exhaustion and something that sounded dangerously close to hope. "I miss you. I've been a coward and No, the last part." My throat closed. That I'd rather risk everything? Jules. He leaned closer to the screen and even through pixels and distance, his gaze pinned me in place. "I bought a plane ticket home 10 minutes before you texted. For this weekend." Because I couldn't do this anymore either. The pretending, the careful distance, acting like losing you was somehow safer than loving you. The words hit like physical force. "You were coming back?" "I've been coming back every weekend I could afford it. Stayed with Marcus because I didn't trust myself to see you, to not beg you, to let me try." His laugh came out broken. "And then your message, and I thought maybe, I'm sorry." Tears blurred my vision. "I'm so sorry I made you wait, that I let fear." "Stop apologizing and listen." He pressed his palm to the screen. "You've always been the one, Jules. Since you stumbled drunk into my room freshman year. Since you rewrote my paper at 4 a.m. Since every morning I woke up and my first thought was wondering if you were awake too. There's never been anyone else. There was only ever you." I matched my hand to his on the screen, separated by 3,000 miles and a piece of glass that suddenly felt impossibly cruel. "Come home," I whispered. He said, "I am home. Wherever you are, that's home." Friday, he stepped off the plane and I was there, waiting. When he dropped his bag and crossed the terminal floor, when I met him halfway and his arms wrapped around me like he'd been holding his breath for months and could finally exhale, it felt less like beginning something new than returning to something we'd always been building toward. "Hey," he murmured against my hair. "Hey yourself." We stood there in Logan Airport's arrivals hall, travelers flowing around us like river current around stone, and I realized this was it. The moment 7 years had been preparing us for. Not dramatic, not perfect. Just real, messy, and terrifying, and worth every risk we'd taken to get here. "Take me home," he said. So I did. And this time neither of us was running.
Beloved listener, I upload new stories every day. To not miss out on my stories, kindly subscribe and turn on the bell notification. Also, what did you think of this story? Leave your answers in the comment.